The Statue of Liberty, also known as Liberty Enlightening the World, was built as a symbol of liberty in the United States as well as a sign of friendship with France. The statue's idea was first proposed in 1865 by a French activist named Edouard de la Boulaye and later supported by French sculptor Frédéric Auguste Bartholdi. The crown with 7 spikes on it represents universal liberty for the 7 oceans and continents of the world. The torch in the statue's right hand symbolizes enlightenment and is meant to lead a path towards freedom. In the other hand, a tablet can be seen with the date, July 4, 1776, which honors the Declaration of Independence. Moving further down the statue, we see broken shackles and chains around the statue's right foot. It symbolizes breaking the restraints of slavery and oppression and moving towards a path of freedom and democracy. After 2 decades of designing and assembling the statue, it was finally completed and unveiled on October 28, 1886.
When the Statue of Liberty was unveiled in October 1886, it was before women had the right to vote, sparking protests from women's rights groups who shamed the hypocrisy of a statue of a female figure that supposedly represented liberty. Suffragists protested at the unveiling, and other protests, such as a national women's strike organized by feminist Betty Friedan in 1970, utilized the statue. Members of Vietnam Veterans Against the War also protested there to encourage the government to withdraw from the Vietnam War. In 1977, 30 Puerto Rican nationalists occupied the statue for 8 hours to demand the freedom of 4 Puerto Rican terrorists. Hypocrisy also lies at how the Statue of Liberty supposedly welcomed immigrants, but laws have always been passed, such as the Chinese Exclusion Acts, due to xenophobia.
To begin, we will consider an optimistic view of the Statue of Liberty, one that acknowledges the views of early immigrants arriving on Ellis Island. Although the Statue of Liberty was made to celebrate freed slaves, it became a beacon of hope for immigrants as it was one of the first things they saw. In the following video from National Geographic, Italian-American Judith Leavell describes how thought-provoking the Statue of Liberty is for her.
I don't know that our generation would be as gutsy as they were to come. My grandmother was 20, and she never went back to Italy.
Judith places herself in her grandmother's shoes, acknowledging the challenges and bravery it took for early immigrants to come to the U.S., understanding that though they had very little and may not have spoken the language, they had heart. She views the statue as a symbol for freedom and liberation. We must take into account those who are not included in this message of liberty, which Jasmine will discuss in our next section.
A look into the modern view on the Statue of Liberty. As the Statue of Liberty remains in New York City on Liberty Island, many people have changed their views since her initial assembly in 1886. Despite her initial meaning of being a welcoming symbol of democracy and hope for immigrants seeking refuge and opportunity within the United States, the Statue of Liberty has now also become a symbol of hypocrisy. The creation of the statue during a time in which the white male population mainly ruled did not include women's suffrage, all immigrants of non-white origin, African Americans, and more. Even today, many groups of people are still not included in the message of liberty. On July 4, 2018, Patricia Okumu from Rise and Resist, a protest group formed in response to Trump's election, climbed the Statue of Liberty in protest of the detention of migrant children. She remained at the base of the statue for 3 hours, according to Time. On August 12, 2019, the acting director of U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services revised the iconic poem on the Statue of Liberty's pedestal to suggest that only immigrants who can stand on their own 2 feet are welcome in the United States. This comment particularly sparked debates on the standing of immigrants within the United States and how hypocritical the Statue of Liberty has become. The Immigration and Customs Enforcement has been deporting and caging immigrants, which contradicts the notion that the country is supposed to welcome them. Within the past few months, and in light of the recent protests for the Black Lives Matter movement, many statues of Confederate generals have been taken down due to their outdated and contradictory origins. The Statue of Liberty is now also in debate.
What does the Statue of Liberty mean to you? While many early immigrants view the statue in a positive light, I do not see the statue as a beacon of hope. For me, I see it as a popular tourist attraction and a great benefit to the U.S. economy. I feel no connection to the statue, especially considering how the message of liberty was not made available to all citizens when the statue was built, and even now.
It personally does not have significant meaning to me, but I see it as leaving behind the ugly past and the beginning of a new generation.
Personally, the Statue of Liberty to me is just a landmark that reminds me of a fun New York vacation I went on as a kid. Otherwise, it's just a patriotic statue that probably has more meaning to those living in New York City.
The Statue of Liberty does not have much meaning to me personally, but after research has now become a reminder of the United States' hypocrisy towards immigrants. In the future, I hope that the Statue of Liberty can live up to its intended meaning of welcoming immigrants with open arms.
What does the Statue of Liberty mean to you? When getting asked this question, it takes me a little bit of time to think about what it truly means to me. What I knew about it was given to us by France for our alliance together, and the US making their way to democracy. She also showed us unity between two countries. Even in the beginning, while she was being built, she brought civic pride to America. It was a united effort to raise the money to create the base of the statue. Kids from all over the country were sending in their pennies and nickels to help support the cause, and then the government supplied the balance. This is the time where you couldn't even see it or touch it, but they believed in it. The Statue of Liberty was a unifying factor between the American children and the incoming immigrants. She represents strength and freedom and is a symbol of unity. She's a symbol of the beginning of your journey. She stands at the harbor, welcoming young and old. She gives you the hope of a new beginning. She is not our government or our lawmakers and should not be condemned because of the ideals of who's in office. However, I feel that she represents what our country could be and have been working on since the creation. Unity in one cause. Our country is not perfect and we've made mistakes. However, we as a people need to grow and unite together.